I'm a strong believer that the building blocks of success can only be found in the rubble of our own failure. And if you're not strong enough to fight through, events of failure, then it's going to be very hard to succeed, especially in making change.
I don't think it's necessarily intuitive that a startup that is helping folks save money by operating more efficiently may also be able to identify training requirements or do benchmarking on quality of care, or at least indicators of benchmarking quality of care versus other clinics, other hospitals. That's really fascinating. How much of this did you sort of see going into this when you founded the company 18 months ago, and how much are you learning along the way?
There's a quote I really like. It's a Steve Jobs quote, and it talks about one of the greatest diseases in corporate America, disease that having a great plan is enough to make a great product. And I only read that recently after I learned that the hard way. But when I read it, I remember it because it resonated with me so much. If you asked me to reinvent the supply chain 4 years ago, right before we had any foray into the space, the plan would have looked nothing like what we have today. Even 18 months ago, when we were launching, things were incredibly different than I now understand them to be, right? As you dissect a problem and as you try to build a solution for people who need it, you become more intimately involved with the problems themselves, and you're able to make better and better products. So not much of this is planned, in all honesty. We had big dreams, but the dreams are now bigger and way smarter than they once were. And I'm sure that in another 18 months, we'll learn so many things to be able to have such a greater impact than we're now even delivering.
That's awesome to hear. There's a book, I don't know if you've read it. I think it's How Big Things Get Done, I think is the title. It's really fascinating because it's talking about mega projects, right? Tunnels, giant towers, bridges, whatever. But it kind of makes the point that failure comes from lack of planning, but plans fail from lack of learning. And it is a really interesting tension for all of us, but certainly in kind of an innovation or trying to do something new space. Like, how do you walk that line between learning, staying close to your customers, adapting your product, adapting your service, versus sticking to some level of conviction about what you believe the world should look like, so that you're not just getting pulled randomly in any given direction?
It's obviously important to plan, and you can't be a prisoner of the moment. But I think the magic of entrepreneurship happens. There's a Mike Tyson quote, right? Everyone's got a plan until you get punched in the face. You got to make a great plan, and without a great plan, you're hopelessly lost. But it's what happens after you get punched in the face, how you respond, and how you adapt, right? Navigating not just the latest and greatest information, but building that information, that feedback, the customer observation, building that database up, sifting through it and finding the most important sort of key details, the most important problems, and outthinking and outsmarting those problems. That's, I think, the magic of entrepreneurship and solution delivery, even beyond sort of company and business settings. It's hard. We're still learning about that process. And every day we uncover new things, but you got to sort of see the patterns of problems that recur across like-minded people, and then focus on those long enough to actually deliver solutions. And any solution we thought once we understand the problem, that's half of it, right? But actually building the right solution is a whole nother thing, because people have in mind one thing. You can build exactly that thing, but what they really want is something much greater than they can imagine, something that only a person who obsesses over their problems, right,
Yep.
can really imagine. And again, these are healthcare workers, healthcare practices. They're obsessing over the patient, as they should be, and it's our job at Grapevine and our job as health tech entrepreneurs to obsess over their problems and make life easier for them.
So what's punched you in the face, Lukai, recently?
Things I've been getting smarter and dodging those punches a lot better these days. But I mean, immediately after launching, so our first 6 months post launch were what some might call, a bust.
Yeah.
We even lost a founder in that process, right? I had a lot of doubt myself because we had made a great plan. We spent, whatever, 6 to 12 months building a product exactly in line with the plan that we had done surveys on and were sure was what people wanted. And it flopped, right? Like we had a huge list of customers, right? A lot of them started using the platform. In theory, it sounded good, but in experience, it wasn't what they wanted. They churned. We weren't able to deliver the savings because people weren't patient enough with our system and our software to actually achieve what we were talking about. And we realized that it's about so much more than just saving dollars. It's about, making life easier. Like every minute of life that's inconvenient throughout ordering supplies, which frankly is all the entire world of ordering supplies, is not something healthcare workers should engage with at all. And trying to make things easier and better for those people that we ended up having a really strong last 12 months, adapting the way that we talk about our product, the way we pitch it, the way we sell it, the cost we assign to it, and the success that we say, okay, that's achieved, that's success. Our whole definition of all of those things, had to get recalibrated after such a flop. But I'm a strong believer that the building blocks of success can only be found in the rubble of our own failure. And if you're not strong enough to fight through, events of failure, then it's going to be very hard to succeed, especially in making change.
Well, and that's a really powerful and true statement. And it is incredibly hard for a lot of people, right? Like the consequences of failure can be challenging. Like it's really easy to say, you should learn from failure. It's really easy to ask the question, do you get rewarded for the insights that you've derived from failure and how you apply them to the future? It's entirely another thing when you're on the front line, you're dealing with health, you're dealing literally with life and death, or you're dealing with an environment where you feel like, I might get patted on the back and told I did a good job if I fail at something, but then I'm not going to get my bonus or my job is going to disappear. Or, there's all of these counter forces.